Harry Desoto's finger trembled over the decimal point. 0.3 instead of 0.3. In 6 hours, 17 dreadnoughts would discover their fuel wouldn't burn past the first hyperspace jump unless he'd miscalculated everything. Human Desoto. Quartermaster Vex's voice froze his blood. Admiral Thek's announcement echoed through the docking bays. Final victory launches in 6 hours. Today we end human resistance, forever. Harry's hands steadied as he watched the largest fleet in Hegemony history prepare to undock. 200,000 human lives hung on whether his numbers were right. What if I'm wrong? Vex approached. Copper scales catching harsh overhead lights. His 4 arms juggled tablets, displaying numbers that could mean Harry's execution. Explain the 0.3% variance in Sector 12 fuel allocation. Harry's finger tapped twice against the console old habit from Amazon warehouses, where miscounts meant missing bonuses, not airlocks. Demand spike from outer colonies. Mining operations expanded faster than projections. Perfect lie, perfect truth. There was a demand spike. Harry had created it by rerouting convoys through longer paths, burning fuel to create the shortages he was now claiming to prevent. Vex studied his tablet. 12 seconds of silence, while Harry counted heartbeats. Acceptable. However, efficiency ratings declined 0.7% this quarter. Vex's compound eyes reflected something like suspicion. Command finds this concerning. They should. 6 months of microscopic sabotage lived in those numbers. Invisible adjustments. Careful chaos. All building toward this moment when the Hegemony's greatest fleet would discover their weapons wouldn't fire, their spare parts wouldn't fit. I'll audit the systems. Standard efficiency optimization. See that you do. Vex turned, then paused. Your performance remains adequate. Human Desoto. Do not disappoint, Command. Adequate. 23 years optimizing supply chains from dog food to data centers. And he was adequate. Harry watched the alien disappear, then allowed himself one memory. Sarah's transport vanishing into hyperspace 8 months ago, bound for Kepler Prison Camp Alpha. His daughter, 19, studying logistics at Stanford before the invasion. Probably dead. But hope was inventory too. Track it carefully. Never let it hit 0. A soft whistle drew his attention. Marcus Chen emerged from behind ammunition pallets, moving with the efficiency that once coordinated packages across the Pacific Northwest. Harry. Workplace boredom colored his voice perfectly. Transport routings showing interesting patterns. Code. The network is ready. They found Keiko Tanaka in Supply Section 7, hunched over production schedules that looked normal to anyone who didn't understand Toyota's lean principles. Her smile could cut shipping tape. Status? Harry asked. Beautiful system. Keiko didn't look up. 0 redundancy, no safety margins, everything optimized for maximum throughput. Her grin sharpened. One tiny disruption collapses the whole thing. Sounds fragile, Marcus observed. Sounds perfect. Pavel found the critical path analysis. She turned the tablet. Harry stared at the supply network. Arteries feeding the war machine that had swallowed Sarah 8 months ago. Every fuel shipment, every ammunition convoy was a countdown to Earth's destruction, unless the decimal point held. Here's what they don't understand about efficiency, Keiko continued. Toyota taught us waste elimination requires perfect timing. But perfect timing creates perfect vulnerability. Harry studied the network, a system so optimized that any disruption would cascade everywhere. Cardiac arrhythmia in steel and starlight. Where's Pavel? Transportation Hub Alpha, Marcus replied, arguing with supervisors about freight protocols. You know how he gets. Harry almost smiled. Pavel approached logistics like Siberian freight trains. Assume everything fails. Build systems that fail gracefully, or catastrophically. 20 minutes of quiet work, each focused on their puzzle piece. Keiko adjusted production schedules, creating delays that would compound into shortages. Marcus recalculated routes to burn extra fuel while maintaining delivery windows. Harry reviewed projections that looked accurate while describing strangulation. The beauty wasn't in individual changes, each too small for statistical noise. Beauty was interaction, Feedback loops, amplifying until inefficiencies became collapse. Harry's comm chirped. Pavel's voice, gruff with suppressed fury. Transportation audit complete. 17 optimization opportunities identified. Recommend immediate implementation. Translation. Pieces in place. Acknowledged. Implement at discretion. Keiko looked up. How long until launch? 5 hours? 36 minutes, Marcus said without checking his chronometer. UPS had trained punctuality into bone. Cutting it close. Amazon timing, Harry replied. Everything fails exactly when needed. 4 hours before launch. The inspection arrived like a migraine. Senior Logistics Coordinator Zethix sweeping through the warehouse, 9 feet of bureaucratic terror wrapped in oil-slick scales. Authority to space entire crews for efficiency violations. Harry watched from across the bay as Zethix reviewed manifests with Vex, their clicking conversation rendered as management consulting jargon. Performance metrics indicate systemic optimization opportunities, Zethix announced. Human auxiliaries will demonstrate protocols for quality assurance. Quality assurance. Corporate speak for someone getting spaced. Marcus appeared beside him. Problem. Full inspection. All teams. 4 hours of demonstration. Harry showed demand forecasting that predicted exactly what aliens expected. Keiko walked through production optimization that eliminated waste while creating invisible vulnerabilities. Marcus explained routing with mathematical precision that made bureaucrats feel smart. Pavel didn't get inspected, too busy arguing with Transportation Hub Alpha about fuel consumption calculations. Loud, profane in 3 languages, perfectly distracting anyone who might notice routing protocols adjusted 0.2% across outer sectors. Satisfactory performance, Zethix declared. Efficiency ratings within acceptable parameters. Proceed with launch preparations. Sometimes the best way to hide revolution was making it look like maintenance. 2 hours before launch. Harry waited for third shift. Skeleton crew, surveillance systems, least vigilant. He opened a communication channel hidden in inventory updates. Container 4471B. Help. Priority Alpha 77. Now, coordinates 1947-2023. Love you. Cargo. One father coming home. The message disappeared into supply networks, carried by manifests and schedules to every human facility within 1,000 light-years. To alien monitoring. Standard coordination. To resistance cells in camps and factories. The signal they'd prepared for. Launch. 8 a.m. Kepler Standard Time. Harry stood on the observation deck watching 17 dreadnoughts undock with mechanical precision. Admiral Thek's voice. All ships, prepare for hyperspace jump. Today we end human resistance forever. Forever. Harry thought about Sarah in the darkness between stars. What did forever mean when your supply chain was optimized for catastrophic failure? The fleet jumped exactly on schedule. Harry checked his chronometer. 6 hours, 37 minutes until they dropped at Sol's Edge. 6 hours until they discovered fuel contaminated with cleaning solvents, ammunition calibrated for different weapons, spare parts designed for other ships entirely. 4 hours after launch. Aboard the dreadnought Dominion. Admiral Thek's bridge gleamed with the sterile perfection of Hegemony engineering. Status displays showed 17 ships in perfect formation, weapons primed, engines running at optimal efficiency. Admiral? The engineering officer's voice carried a note of confusion. Fuel mixture showing unusual readings. Performance degrading at 0.4% per hour. Thek's jaw clenched. Elaborate. Molecular composition appears correct, but engines are struggling, like trying to burn water instead of fuel. Impossible. Kepler Station maintains perfect supply standards. The communications officer looked up from his station. Sir, Retribution reports similar issues. And vengeance. All ships showing fuel problems. Thek felt something cold settle in his stomach. Fleet-wide? Yes, sir. And Admiral, Weapons systems are experiencing malfunctions. Ammunition chambers won't cycle properly. Through the viewport, Thek watched his unstoppable fleet begin to falter. Engine exhausts flickered irregularly. Weapon arrays moved sluggishly during targeting tests. "Get me Kepler Station, now!" Back on Kepler Station. Vex materialized at Harry's workstation, scales reflecting amber emergency lighting. Fleet Command reports fuel irregularities. "Explain these readings." Harry pulled up manifests pointing to specifications that looked normal to anyone not understanding hyperdrive molecular chemistry. Standard composition. Quartermaster. Parameters within acceptable ranges. Why are engines performing below optimal? Break-in period. New additives require calibration. Performance should stabilize within 6 hours. Another perfect lie. Performance would stabilize at 0 when solvents finished eating engine seals. Vex studied tablets, searching for patterns in numbers, telling stories he couldn't read. Monitor closely. Report irregularities. Of course. 90 minutes later. Kepler Station. Fleet Command. Systematic ammunition malfunctions across multiple vessel classes. Request immediate resupply with verified ordnance. Vex practically teleported to Harry's console, forearms juggling tablets showing weapon performance dropping like stones. Impossible. Quality control protocols are perfect. Harry displayed ammunition specifications meeting every requirement in technical manuals. What manuals didn't mention? Tolerances written for different alloy composition, 0.3 mm larger than the barrels they were supposed to fit. All specifications verified. Perhaps weapons need recalibration? Systems functioning perfectly yesterday don't require recalibration today, unless someone optimized ammunition for improved performance, better accuracy, higher velocity, enhanced penetration. Harry paused carefully. Sometimes optimization requires adjustment periods. Vex stared, compound eyes reflecting something approaching suspicion. But suspicion required imagination. Bureaucrats trained to avoid that inefficiency. Aboard the Dominion. "Admiral!" The engineering officer's voice cracked with panic. "Complete engine failure across the fleet. Fuel isn't burning, it's corroding the injection systems. Weapons are completely offline. And sir, life support is beginning to fluctuate." Thek stared at displays that defied mathematics. Fuel meeting specifications but destroying engines. Ammunition passing tests but jamming weapons. Parts matching blueprints but failing catastrophically. "This is sabotage," he whispered. His communications officer looked up. "Sir, Earth Defense Fleet dropping out of hyperspace. Multiple contacts. They're moving to surround us." Through the viewport, sleek human ships emerged from hyperspace like predators scenting blood. Ships that should have been destroyed hours ago, arriving to find the Hegemony's greatest force stranded and helpless. "All ships, prepare for." Thek's order died, as his weapon systems displayed nothing but error messages. "Sir, incoming transmission from Earth Defense Command. Admiral Thek." The human voice was crisp, professional. "This is Admiral Sarah Brown, Earth Defense Force. You will surrender your vessels immediately." Thek closed his eyes. The greatest fleet in Hegemony history, defeated by humans they'd dismissed as auxiliary labor. Back on Kepler Station. "This is sabotage," Vex said, voice lacking conviction. "This is logistics," Harry corrected gently. "You wanted maximum efficiency with zero waste. We delivered exactly that." "Explain." Harry gestured toward displays showing adequate supply levels, describing complete failure. Efficiency isn't moving things from A to B. It's understanding systems so completely, you become indistinguishable from them. And, once indistinguishable, you can reprogram. Truth hit Vex like physical impact. Harry saw it in changed breathing, widening eyes, comprehension approaching. For the first time, the quartermaster saw his supply chain not as a conquest tool but a rebellion weapon. "You coordinated this, all of it. We maintained your inventory, organized supplies, optimized distribution networks." Harry's voice stayed level. "We did exactly what you hired us for." Marcus's voice crackled through communications. "All human personnel, Report to designated assembly areas. Earth Defense. Command transport ships requesting docking clearance. Harry looked past Vex toward observation windows where Earth's Liberation Fleet hung in space. Ships that should have been destroyed hours ago. Arriving to find the Hegemony's greatest force surrendering, Vex followed his gaze, watching alien dreadnoughts drift powerless, while human vessels moved with predatory grace. How did you coordinate across facilities? We monitored communications. You monitored communications but never understood what we communicated. Every manifest was a message. Every schedule was coordinates. Every adjustment was a vote in a democracy you didn't know existed. Impossible. Inevitable. Harry turned to his console where new text waited. Buried in routine transfers, invisible to anyone not understanding logistics poetry. Transport 7. Alpha, Dock 12. Package delivered intact. Coming home. Desoto Sarah. Alive. Coming home. Harry closed his eyes, feeling 8 months of careful rage transform into something resembling joy. Around him, the warehouse echoed with human voices, workers talking to workers, families reuniting, plans for journeys home. Kepler Station's liberation took 14 minutes, conducted by soldiers finding Hegemony forces too busy with supply failures to resist. Turns out when weapons won't fire and communications are down, military superiority becomes academic. Harry found Sarah at Dock 12, 3 inches taller, 30 pounds thinner, wearing prison grey and the satisfied smile of someone who'd optimized a very large system. Dad. She hugged with the fierce intensity of inventory, finally delivered to the correct destination. Did you get my shipping manifests? Every one. How did you coordinate production schedules from prison? Sarah's smile turned predatory. Hegemony uses prisoners to manufacture supply containers. Someone had to manage quality control. And you optimized for different parameters? Structural failure under specific stress conditions. Shipping containers make excellent communication networks when designed to fail at precisely the right moment. Harry laughed, his first genuine laughter in 8 months. Around them, Earth's personnel coordinated with liberated workers, identifying supply caches and prisoner locations across a dozen systems. Networks that had fed war machines would now reunite families, rebuild lives. 2 hours later, Harry stood in the abandoned supply control center, watching displays flicker and die. Quartermaster Vex found him there, looking smaller, diminished by realizing his achievement was built on rebellion's foundation. I don't understand, Vex said. Efficiency ratings were adequate. Performance met every standard. Our performance was perfect, Harry agreed. We delivered exactly what you asked. Supply chains, moving anything, anywhere with maximum efficiency, zero waste. Then why did everything fail? Harry picked up a tablet, displaying manifests that seemed like love letters written in rebellion's language. You never understood the difference between what you wanted and what you needed. You wanted supply chains supporting conquest. You needed chains supporting your people. What did you give us? Supply chains supporting our people instead. Vex stared at darkened displays, perhaps finally understanding that humans he'd dismissed as auxiliary units were the architects of his empire's destruction. Harry walked toward the exit, paused at the threshold. Know the real difference between human and hegemony logistics. What? You see supply chains as control tools. We see them as connection tools. Harry looked back at the empty warehouse where dust danced in artificial sunlight. And connection, Quartermaster, always flows toward freedom. The corridor beyond echoed with human voices planning supply runs to liberated camps, coordinating refugee transport, organizing logistical miracles that happened when efficiency served liberation instead of conquest. Harry stepped into that noise, letting it carry him toward Dock 12, where Sarah coordinated the first convoy to Kepler Prison Camp Alpha. Behind him, Vex stood alone in his perfectly organized warehouse, surrounded by empty shelves and the ghost of a supply chain optimized for revolution instead of conquest. The Hegemony thought they'd hired logistics coordinators. They never realized they were training saboteurs. Supply chains, Harry had learned, were just logistics. But logistics, properly applied, could move anything, including empires.